see the light of a brand new day. I can see.
Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to the Way of Light Winter Solstice Masterclass Series. I'm Desiree Dunbar, your host, and it is such a privilege, such an honor to be here with the most fabulous witch I know. She is the creator and author of over 14 books. She has her own band. She has a recent book that's just come out. And she is the original witch who has given us permission to come out of the broom closet and to ultimately explore our magic, our sacred selves, and our gifts. And she is Fiona Horne. Welcome.
Thank you, Desiree. It's a beautiful, generous introduction. Thank you.
It's so great to be here with you. Where are you? Which part of the world are you in now?
Oh, yes. Well, when it comes to witchcraft, as we know, we kind of exist between the worlds, beyond the worlds, around the worlds, as above, so below, and all over. Right now, as far as physical linear sense, where I'm sitting is in my office, which is a spare bedroom in a house in Dunsborough, Western Australia, which is right on the bottom. If you're looking at Australia like a map, I'm in that bottom left corner, sort of like that.
And I know you're also a pilot, and you were doing some work as a pilot. Are you still
Yeah.
doing that in Australia?
No, I was flying in the Caribbean, and I got all my flight training done in Los Angeles, and then I went and worked in the Caribbean, based out of the US Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico for quite a few years, actually. And then so I was flying up and down the Caribbean chain. I have to say, a plane. At first I was like, oh my gosh, can I do this? Because it seems a little bit more complicated than a broomstick. But I found that it's a lot more comfortable than a broomstick. I can fit more people on a plane rather than a broomstick. So it seemed like a more useful method of transport when I was seeking to do aid work. So I was volunteering for humanitarian aid and animal rescue and that kind of service work. And then ultimately, as I was flying, I just got too many hours. I thought I have to just go and get my commercial certificates and actually do this for a job. So I did. And it was actually COVID in 2020 that grounded the airline I was flying for, and kind of led to this huge life shift. And now I'm back in Australia and not flying airplanes, and sort of kind of back on the broomstick with a guitar in my hand because I'm playing music again, which I haven't done since really. So who would have thought?
That's so amazing. I saw on your Instagram the other day you had posted a picture of you playing music now and then playing back then, and you look exactly the same, like still super rock star rocking out. What kind of
Those
music is it?
now,
What is
I
it?
found a photo of when I was in my first band, the Mothers, in like 1987, I think it was, and then just a few months ago, and I was sort of in the same position, like up on the microphone singing, and I put the two together, yeah, and it was, it's the same. It feels the same. The energy is still the same, except the difference when I was playing when I was like 18 or 19, and now, playing guitar at the age of 56 in linear years and being on stage again. There's a lot more. I get to enjoy it a lot more now. I think that back then, when you're younger, you feel like you've got something to prove. You feel like you've got to get people to approve of you, and I certainly was doing music and performance, not because I thought I was so great and awesome, but actually because I was very insecure and I was seeking approval. And I thought, well, if I see other people on stage doing cool stuff and I look up to them and I think those people are great, maybe if I do something like that, people will think I'm great too. And that's, that was honestly the motivation at the age of 17 and 18 to play guitar and performing bands and do music. But now as someone, more mature, shall we say, in linear years, but definitely not grown up, I love just the sense of just enjoyment now. I don't have anything to prove, and I had a big career in a band in the 90s. It was very successful, and so I had my time as that rock star kind of job life, and to do it for fun now is just a beautiful blessing. Behind me, you can see it's my band, Sea Witch, up there. That's our debut album. Just debuted it on the independent charts. I was like, woo! So,
Why Sea Witch? Why Sea Witch?
Yeah, Sea Witch. All the songs are spells, so it's like heavy rock. And every song in it is linked to a spell that's either been published in one of my books or from my book of shadows. So it's got a rock audience, which has, we're sort of growing, a great rock audience. We're streaming on all platforms. We've got an international audience, but particularly strong audience in Australia. We're doing live shows and everything. It's all a lot of fun. As you said, on my Instagram page, you can go there and find out all about it. But real witches or anyone with a magical kind of inclination, when they hear the Sea Witch songs, or they see the lyrics, if they get the album, get the lyric sheet, they're like, oh, and there's songs like called SBAT, Witches Forever, so many different kind of approaches to performing music and sharing magic within that space. I just love it. It's a lot of fun.
It's amazing because you're raising the energy, you're sending it out there. Then what kind of results do you notice in your live shows as you're casting these spells?
I think it's very similar to what happens, funnily enough, when I do book events, and I might have the beautiful privilege and opportunity to speak to, anywhere from 20 people to 200, 300 people about living a magical, empowered life. And what have I learned as a practicing witch over the last 3 decades? And, when you're performing music live on stage, whilst you're not overtly discussing matters like that, you are lending, or you are sharing, is a better word, that big picture, that whole sort of thing. This is life. This is the moment. Music is magic. It's one of the first driving forces we've felt. As even as little kids, I was watching my girlfriend's daughter go like this along to one of our songs the other day. I'm like, oh yeah, it's all just it's the driving force. That sense of sharing energy together with music as the glue that holds us, and so much fun. And I think that when you get to share that kind of energy with people, and then when you're actually doing it in a sense where you're talking and especially about magical and spiritual approaches to living an empowered and positive life, and it's a similar feeling for me anyway, because I really think that everything I do now is driven by a desire to be of service in some capacity. And when I wake up in the morning and if I'm feeling a bit lost or I'm feeling a bit directionless, which isn't a bad thing, because I love that saying, all who wander are not necessarily lost, it's like, but if I can just define everything I'm doing back to, well, how can I be useful? If I wake up in a funk and I'm like, oh, I just feel like crap today, I don't even know where to get started, I've got all these kind of problems, like whether it's relationship problems or financial problems or anything problems, I can think, okay, well, how can I step out of my own head and my own obsession with self today and find a way to be useful and do something for someone else, or just not even the doing of it, just being, just trying to be more harmonious. And that might mean spending time in nature in some kind of ritual that honors nature, where it's not just about us interacting with a person or an animal, because that's two obvious points of reference to go, oh, I'll do something nice for these creatures today. Sometimes it's not just, but it's nature, just being in a natural space and appreciating it and breathing and feeling and sharing that sort of energy. And sometimes being of service is as simple as that. And other times it's actually like going, okay, this isn't about me. Yes, I'm spread too thin. I've got so much stuff on today. I've got 3 things I'm managing: my new book, my album, my partner, la, 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 la. But I'm just going to get it all sorted out today, because it's not really about me. It's about what I can facilitate in other people's lives. So that might mean providing jobs for other people, because the tour I'm on with my band is employing a ton of people. And whilst I may not be looking at it like, oh, this is a job that I'm receiving a lot of money from, which is not the case when you're in a band at all, especially starting out again. And it's not about money. It's about just a sense of feeling that you're involved in something that's useful, that can be challenging, but the lessons are worth it. And the experiences ultimately are more than worth it, because they help you feel fulfilled. And I think I'll wrap that up by saying, this is a very long spiel I just went on, I realised. But I also think that, and I have this perspective as, I guess, an elder now, a little bit different to when I was much younger doing music, and even in my early days writing books 30 years ago and putting them out there and everything. I used to think that my life was good if I was happy. And that's not the case anymore. My life is good if I feel fulfilled. And that might mean sometimes I'm very sad and I'm very challenged, and I may even be, bordering on depressed. But do I feel fulfilled? Is there something I can do about it here? So when I go into those darker places that maybe are not sustainable but are necessary to explore, they are an opportunity to move through and kind of learn from and through. So do I feel fulfilled? Do I feel purposeful? And then if there's ever that point where you're just going, I just don't know, well, today's not about me. What can I do for someone else? And how can my magic, my life, my skills, my efforts benefit others? And pretty soon your own crap's sorted out. You just get on with it.
Yeah, if everyone lived at that level of integrity, our world would be entirely different. And
that's a thing to say, because that would just mean you basically said, I've just sorted out all the world's problems.
Yeah, I think you did. The problem is we can't stick to it. It's really hard to keep our promise.
It's about sustaining that. And, I was thinking before, I came on to speak with you today, Desiree, it's like, what would I like to offer any modern day priestesses who are watching this, and I thought I would inspire in them the idea that, yes, it's worth it. Life is incredible. Even when it absolutely sucks, it's still amazing. I mean, we're existing on a planet that's spinning away and around the sun, like in space. I mean, we have this phenomenal experience as humans, even in a very challenged world right now. But life is magic, and that is where, as a witch, I think my way of looking at things may be a little different to someone who isn't a witch, for example. Because witchcraft now is no longer really, I sort of say, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, whenever it was, when my first book came out on witchcraft, witches were shrouded in myth, suspicion, and fear. It was still kind of the 90s. And I mean, I remember when I was first drawn to witchcraft in the 80s, trying to find books about it, and there was no internet, and there's nothing on TV about it, and except it said witches were satanic, bad, and evil. So you kind of had to get through all of that. And after being a self-identifying practicing witch now for over 3 decades, it's like, well, what is different about being a witch? Because there's lots of ways you can live a life and and try to be useful and meaningful, whatever religious or spiritual paradigm or path you may walk. But I think with witchcraft, what makes it a little bit different and where I use it is I believe, feel, and absolutely trust that I am, in this physical form, a creature evolved of this biosphere, of this world, of this universe. So I have as a witch, an intimate relationship with every aspect of that. And so when I do spells and rituals and work with elements or aspects or things of the natural world, or perceptions of the natural world, or interactions with the natural world, I'm weaving it together in such a way that, to me, it feels magical. And it can do things, it can create change, it can allow for acceptance, it can encourage transformation, because I consciously allow it to be, and decide that that's the way I'm going to experience this world. Might be an analogy would be if you're going to Italy for 2 years and you want to live there full time, you're thinking, I'm going to learn Italian, because otherwise how am I going to communicate with everyone? So I've said this often, but I really mean it. It's like, learn the language of magic and the world becomes a magical place. And then you start to interact with it, and things happen that are out of the norm, that maybe science or mainstream medicine or any of those things can't really accept or acknowledge, and would probably say you're nuts if you said, well, I experienced this. They'll be like, oh, that's impossible. Well, nothing's impossible. I think it was Audrey Hepburn that coined the phrase. I don't know, I've seen it on a meme, but there's nothing that's impossible, because the very word itself says I'm possible. So as a modern witch, I live like that. And and certainly as a modern witch who's identified as a witch and forged my path, shared it, learned from others, shared their paths, and, you know, crisscrossed and woven this magical life together. I certainly can know without a doubt now that the most magical moments in life where you really feel powerful, and when I say powerful, that's not an ego-aggrandizing sort of self-aggrandizing statement. It's more just like that sense of, you know, everything makes sense. And I feel this life is a good life. It's in those moments where invariably you're alone and you're in a natural place, and all of the stuff doesn't matter as much as the being does. All of the doing doesn't matter as much as the is does. And maybe that's a bit Buddhist, maybe that's a bit Taoist, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert in those paths. I learn a little of everything really as a lay person, but that's when I really feel like a witch. It's not about being able to go, oh, I snapped my fingers, did this sick spell and lined up everything in correspondence with the elements and the moon and the directions and everything. And, and I got this sick new job that's, you know, sometimes spells work like that and magic can work like that. But often it's just that sense of feeling, wow, I feel like I'm enough. I feel like life is incredible. And if someone asked me what my favourite spell is, I'd have to say my life. It's a work of magic, all of it, all the time. And when I shift out of this physical form, I'll look forward to seeing what comes next.
Wow, I love that. You're blowing my mind right now. I love that. I'm curious, you're such a woman of, I want to say urgency, because if you can author 14 books and you can create songs and perform and study to become a pilot, you know how to create urgency. And what breaks my heart is when I look around women specifically who have lots of visions and dreams, but they can't seem to break through to create that urgency or to get the breakthrough they need to actually take action. Do you have any wisdom around that? Because you're embodying it and sharing it with us right now so beautifully.
Thank you for sharing the term urgency. I've never actually heard that, and not to my awareness, and certainly not face-to-face in a conversation had that described or that word used, urgency. That's so interesting, because that makes me think, why am I so urgent about everything? Like, in the sense of like, why? And it's something it's how I approach all of it. Like, how do I get so much stuff done?
It's so natural. It's your superpower. So we're like grokking it from you right now, because you don't even know how you do it in a sense, right? But you know, you love skydiving, you love surfing, you're a rock star. Like, you take action. You're not afraid of people maybe rejecting you. I don't know.
Thinking, like, because the first thing that goes through my head of like, why would I have this urgency to grasp life by the proverbial, you know, horns, for want of a better term, Fiona Horne horns, terrible. And I think if I look back to, you know, just being born in this physical form in the circumstances I was born in, I'm an adopted child. I was born of my father's Hungarian Jewish and my mother is German Lutheran. And I mention those specifically because my father is a survivor of the Holocaust, and all my Jewish side of my family is, you know, like my most immediate direct ancestors are survivors of the Holocaust. And then on my mother's side, my family there survived the Exodus after the Second World War, you know, getting away from the Russians, and it was a terribly brutal and violent time and an extraordinary time of survival. So from both sides, my mother and my father, I have this survival in me, this DNA survival kind of feeling. And I've had some past life work done, and I've had like some interest. Even before I knew I was adopted and born of that heritage, I was told by a past life, what's the term? I'm having a regression therapy, that I was a little child running around these cobblestone streets in some Eastern European town, and I was put on a truck and sent to a camp and died. I was 5 and I was gassed, and that was my most recent life before this one. And I was told that when I died, I was crying out for my mother, Uti Uti. I was using this term, and everyone ignored me. I was little, I was under their feet, and I knew that I was dying and that my life meant nothing. And even though I loved it and felt so excited about it, because the first vision I had of it was running down these cobblestone streets, I had all this energy, and I had these almost like little there were shoes that were sort of tied onto my feet, and they made a clack, clack, clack sound. And I loved the sound they made, and I was clack, 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 running down these streets, these cobblestone streets. And then I'm dead. And I died feeling that all the love I had for life was worth nothing, and I was worth nothing. So I was told that that was my most recent life. And I was told that in my early 20s, that session. And then, I found out after that I was born of that Jewish and German heritage, which had suffered so many atrocities and injustices, and but also brought forward this incredible energy of survival. And so my father, his story of survival is being being shot in the leg, loaded on a wagon of corpses, and one of the guards seeing him moving and took him off, because they were kind of sort of friends in this camp, and pulled him off the cart, and he lived. And then my father, the war was ended shortly after that. My father led 400 men out of that camp across the snow, found a box of butter in the snow, a gift to the people or whatever from New Zealand or something. And so he rationed out the butter to those men. And only 3 men survived, and the 3 that survived ended up emigrating to Australia, and hence he met my mother, who's also an immigrant. And, I was born in the 60s, and they couldn't marry, and, Jewish German, a bit too soon after the war, not going to work. And I was given up for adoption and raised as Catholic. So my point in this story, this is actually my autobiography, The Naked Witch, which I think might be sitting behind me somewhere. There it is. That's my book, The Naked Witch. That autobiography was published in 2017, and it tells this story. But I guess you've asked me about urgency and why, and here I am looping back around to it. I think when I think of what I've been born of in the physical form, what's imprinted, I think that's why I feel a sense of urgency to just live as much as I can, as hard as I can right now, because this isn't a practice run. This is it. Life is now. And no matter what you say about rebirth or being born again or past lives, it's now. What does it really matter what happened in my past life and my future life? What's happening right now is the imprint I'm making for the next. Not that I'll be giving birth to a child out of my body, and I haven't, but I have given birth to a lot of books and music, and they're my babies, and they're out there in the world doing their thing. And so I just think maybe that's why I live like this, and even when I don't feel like with my physical form, if it starts, like someone might look at me and go, oh, she has no health concerns. I'm lying here with all these situations going on. Well, I've gone through situations where, broken my ankle, or I've had a pretty serious health thing happen a number of years ago, which laid me up for quite a while. But it didn't stop me creating and doing things, and still, So I reckon that no matter what, life is no matter what, it's what you make of it and choose to make of it. And I humbly and respectfully offer that for, taking into consideration the many extraordinary circumstances humans find themselves in, whether it's physical health or financial, but I've lived on the streets. Didn't finish school. Because I had a very difficult home life, so I had to leave, and I left it. I wasn't 15, I didn't even turn 15, and I was out trying to forge my way in my life. Now my family and I now are all sorted. It's all good. But, it's just everyone has their stories and their journeys, and I think that if we say, oh, well, I can't do this because of this, well, who has said that really? You. So as a modern witch, I would say the second you start telling yourself you can't do something, you need to maybe consider that you might want to rephrase that and go, well, I'm gonna allow for there to be a different scenario right now and see what I can do with it, because that's what being a witch is. It's, you know, it's about sensing that again, I come back to that idea of nothing's impossible. There might be your version of what you think you need or want to do might look one way, and you'll go for it, and it might end up looking like this. I never thought I'd be back on stage playing guitar and singing again. Especially in my late 50s or mid 50s, if we have to put a linear time frame on it. I didn't think I was doing all this again with as much energy as I had 30 years ago. But, you know, I also didn't say I couldn't do it. I just left it open. Surprise me, universe. It's like why I love the Fool card in the tarot decks, that the 0 card, everything and nothing. The Fool is my favourite card, because literally the Fool stands at the beginning of a path going, cool, I'm going to take a leap of faith and catch me, universe. I'm looking forward to seeing where I land.
I love this so much, because it gets us out of victimization and we can be curious without needing to know the end result. Like you're saying, you didn't know you were going to end up doing all these things, but you're curious.
And the victim thing is something I really relate to, because I certainly played that out in my life. You know, I'm also a survivor of abuse as a child, not from my immediate parents, but a member of the family was sexually abusing me from when I was 3 to when I was 15. So, you know, I don't often talk about all this stuff. It is in the autobiography, and I don't usually go blah, blah, blah about it, but I want to offer as a, you know, because it's a lovely privilege to be chatting with you and your community, Desiree, that, you know, that, you know, stuff happens and things can, you know, especially with that kind of stuff. And that creates a very, very confronting mentality and approach to sexuality, self-worth, self-value, you know. So all of this stuff is kind of woven into my life and how I live now, that sense of urgency. But one of the most, I definitely think, and I'm so grateful that I finally let go of the self-sabotage, victim martyr mentality. My gosh, I had that for a long time, like so long. Even when I was on stage in the 90s, like really successful with, you know, huge audiences, 10,000 people screaming my name, I still went back to the hotel room after the show, looked at myself and said, well, you're a piece of shit, aren't you? You know, you managed to pull it off tonight and make everyone think you were cool. I had this horrible, ugly internal dialogue. And, you know, and it took me so long to work through that, but I got through it. And I never think stuff like that anymore, you know, and consequently no one speaks to me like that anymore, because you tend to attract it a bit when you're kind of in your head with it, and then you manifest it around you. Or, you know, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the abuse or the victim, or it's at a point you're just like, you know. So, you know, you work through this stuff, and then and you just, it's an amazing amazing perspective to have. And to still want to live, to still want to trust life, trust the experiences, trust people, trust yourself, you know. And so a lot of my books and what I, especially Art of Witch, the manifesto that I wrote in 2019, which isn't really a how-to book about how to, you know, there's not a whole lot of, well, these are the meanings of the numbers, these are the meanings of the herbs, these are the meanings of the crystals, do all this for them, and, you know, and these are the gods and goddesses, and this is, you know, it's not a book about witchcraft like that. It's more a manifesto of how can you tie it all together, maybe. And a lot of what I'm sharing is kind of folded into the Art of Witch as well.
I love it, because it truly is a lifestyle, isn't it? It's not like a party trick, like we're gonna pull out the oracle cards at the party. This is
because it's fun.
We still like to do that, but
yeah.
But it really is a way of life, isn't it? It's once you're a witch, you're being a witch everywhere you go. And
and it's hard to go back from it. I'd offer this too, you know, once you started walking the path of the witch and you're not worried about it, you're not having imposter syndrome, so to speak, you actually go, oh gosh, this is actually, I feel pretty in this, you know. And it's very hard to stop. It's like you're always just going to kind of realize, well, you know, if you're wondering you're a witch, you probably are. And then once you start to walk the path, you'll pretty much, yeah, it's unlikely you'll step off. Some do, but you always have this different way of experiencing the world and experiencing yourself within the world and others and everything. And I'm glad for that, because I think that when I was in the early days, you wonder, you think, oh, is this real? Am I supposed to be able to do the special effects magic? Am I supposed, and then you just, after a while, and then you worry you're doing things wrong. Oh, I haven't set up my altar right. I put the green candle in the wrong quarter. It's like, what am I going to do now? And then you're like, oh, now I'm like thinking, I've cast the wrong spell, or I, and you just get too hung up on judgment and ego and attachment to outcome, and that's all an important part of early life, I think, and setting the paradigms and boundaries that help you explore the rest of existence in. But I think there's a point, and again, I humbly offer this because what do I know except that I'm living it and I'm writing books about it, but this is just my perspective if it's useful to anyone. But I think you realise when you kind of get past that third decade in your life in linear terms, that especially if you're identifying as a witch and living as a witch and walking the path of the witch, you'll realise the ego perspective doesn't really align itself very usefully anymore in your magical life. And it's kind of and it kind of weaves back around to what we were started talking about. What's the most powerful thing you can do as a witch? Be useful, be of service, help others. Didn't we start out as healers, midwives, the shamans? Wasn't that like, in our nebulous origins, weren't we all kind of offering some skill in some capacity, And I'll tell you something, this is pretty intense, but, last year, in October of last year, which would be 2021, because we're talking in 2022, I had part of my finger bitten off in an attack. And there I was sitting away quietly working on the next oracle deck, which is, at the time was for teenagers, but I've shifted that now and it's kind of for everyone, but tapping away. And there's some workers in the yard trimming the trees. I go out, check the job, go to pay them, and one of their dogs breaks into our property and attacks our dingo. We have a dingo. It's an Australian wild animal, not really a dog. They're quite different, but they look a little bit like a dog. It says the dog, this big dog did attack the dingo, Azari, who I love more than anything. She's like, love her so much, and she loves me. So the second she screamed, I grabbed her, and in getting her like away from the dog, I mean, this happened inside our property, right at our front door. So I didn't even think. She screamed, I grabbed her. The other dog attacked her, me, and I lost the end of my finger. So that's not very glamorous, is it? But there I am, tapping away on my 1 minute, and my hands are everything. I'm a writer, I'm a yoga instructor, I'm a pilot, I'm a fire dancer. My hands are everything. And there it was, this shocking injury, this amputation of the pads of these fingers torn off, and it was, and Zari's attacked and her ear was damaged. I don't want to gore everyone out with too many. It was a shocking, horrific, violent, and just next level. And after hospital, hand surgery, couldn't restore it. The finger has actually grown back a bit, which has told me would happen. Grew back about a centimetre. That's another story. But anyway, my point of sharing all this is, stuff happens in life, really heavy stuff, and can be, who would ever think, oh, I'm an amputee now? I humbly offer that, because I had a friend who lost part of her leg in a car accident, so I'm a minor amputee, but an amputee nonetheless. It's pretty intense when part of your body's just not there. It's gone. It's just gone. No blood, just gone, and these fingers hanging off. So, but I had PTSD. I had to see a psychologist and go through the EMDR is the name of the treatment. I think EDMR or EMDR. That she used to help me be able to look at my hand again, touch it, change my bandages, and because I had such massive trauma over it. And so I had treatment with a psychologist for a number of months to get over the PTSD. And, now here I am. I just finished that oracle deck a year later, got it sent off. Zari's doing great. She's happy. And I'm living with this different hand now. And it does affect things. I can't do certain things, but luckily I can still make a fist because the doctors were able to save a lot of the finger, and then it grew back. Part of it grew back. So my final word on this is, when you're living a magical life and you're committed to practicing as a witch, and heavy stuff can happen, and it can happen at a point in your life of like, what, universe, what am I supposed to learn from this? Why did this have to happen? Gosh, you know. And then I was told by this, someone wrote to me on social media, because I did ultimately do a post about it and shared with people, because we had to cancel all these shows. It was a huge record launch for my band. We had to cancel. It's like the whole tour gone. Fiona's lost it. You know, her hand's damaged. She's not doing anything for a while. I'm a guitarist. It's like, you know, boom. So, but someone wrote to me and said, I studied in South America and was taught different aspects of the mind practices and spiritual things that they did. And this is not commonly known, but healers in South America will tell you that the minds would take people they consider to have magical or special powers to the top of the pyramid and cut off the end of their right finger, their pinky finger, cut off the end of it, of the pinky finger, to mark that they have special powers and that they're a witch, in the, you know, using that English word to describe what they considered a magical person. And so I thought, well, there's no getting away from it. Now I'm actually, you know, marked as a witch officially with this cut off right pinky. So I'm really, you know, here I'm just saying, you can't step off the path of a witch. Well, I really can't now. So you got to be able to laugh about it. I'm glad I can now. I couldn't for a long time.
Yeah,
but,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, life is quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. And when you have like a frame of reference of spirituality to keep coming back to, I think it allows us to continue forward and to have that sense of humor along the way as well.
Yeah. And then to make it to others, you know, just, and I mean, it's strange. Sometimes I'll look at my hand or it'll hurt. I mean, it's still hurting. It's only just a year ago. My hand therapist and the doctor said it's usually a few years before you really settle into this new kind of hand, you know, this new feeling or this new way of physical form. And again, this is tiny compared to what some people go through, but your hands are pretty sensitive. I notice it all the time. It's like, it's very temperature sensitive and stuff. But anyway, but sometimes I just look at it and I go, oh, God damn, you know, like, did that really have to happen? But it did. So you go, okay, well, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do with it? And sometimes it reminds me more of what I can survive rather than the trauma of the event now. Like it actually fills me with a sense of resilience and courage and even confidence. I thought I'd gone through some pretty gnarly things in life, but getting your finger bitten off in a really violent attack just out of the blue one day when you're at home working on your book and just, it's a nice sunny day and just bang. And it's not only that, but something you love more than anything. I mean, that was the thing when I did the social media post about it. It's like, what would you do for love? She screamed. I didn't even think. This dog was huge and really vicious, like next level monster. Just came through the gate. And I just went and faced it and grabbed her. And my partner said I did what any good mother would do, you know. So it's, yeah.
It's a lot about your character. Again, like the courage, the boldness, the urgency. You're like, yeah, once again, right?
Yeah.
And so adaptable as well through, you know, all the stories you've been sharing so beautifully today, just your adaptability. And I'm sure Magick has, you know, been the thing that supported you in that dancing with the unfolding of life.
And magic and allowing yourself to dance with it. So if anyone's watching and they're kind of feeling a bit paralyzed in their life or a bit lost, I don't know, you know, say like an empty nester or who's like, well, what do I do now? Well, it's more like, well, what don't you do? There's so much cool stuff out there. And it might just be, it doesn't have to be, no, you don't have to go and jump out of an airplane. I did when I turned 40. You know, that set off on this whole new thing. I became a pilot in my late 40s. I mean, you know, it's just what don't I do now? You know, there's so much out there. And it might even just be something really simple. When I say just, I recently learned to play chess too. I love it. There's so much cool stuff to do. I'm now a really passionate amateur astronomer. I got a pair of binoculars from the op shop because I'm not that loaded. I can't afford a really expensive pair of binoculars. But I got some, and my partner and I went to this amazing astro tour with Greg Quick, and he's this great guy up in Broome, Western Australia, and there's no light pollution up there. The stars are amazing, and you do this kind of 2-hour experience where you get shown all the different planets. And from looking at it from an astronomy point of view, and marrying that with how I look to the skies for divine inspiration and guidance, and the moon for rituals and all of that. It was, and to sort of to look to the skies and for the divine. And now I look to the skies to see, oh, where's Jupiter tonight? Where's Mars? What are they doing? To understand that the sun isn't setting, the world is actually, we're turning away from the part of the sky the sun appears to be in, and that's what creates that rotation. The planet is literally spinning, and then we're going around the sun. I mean, it's just, you start to get vertigo. You're like, oh my gosh, I really am on this moving planet. And I think it's so beautifully to witchcraft and relating to all of this, the bloody stars, the constellations, like when you start looking at them, like they're actually there and you can actually see them, rather than just kind of looking at the newspaper and going, oh, what does my astrology chart say today? Or picking up the next great book about astrology. Well, there's so many ways you can just keep exploring the world, and no matter where you are and how you are. And even, I'm a huge fan of the internet, and I hate the internet too. Huge media. I hate social media. It's like we're in this position in this modern world, even with all its challenges and screw ups and everything, to still live, extraordinarily brilliant, empowered lives, no matter where we are, in our perspective or our situations. Because that's the one constant in life. There's one thing that absolutely, without a doubt, will happen, and it's the only thing we can. As someone who reads cards for people, I've read oracle, and I've written my own oracle, but I read tarot. I've done it for 30 years. I've helped people all over the world in lots of different circumstances with divination. But I always say to them, I can't predict anything 100%, except one thing. Everything will change, absolutely, without a doubt. That's the 100% constant. Everything will change, and that's a good thing.
Yes, that's a really good reminder. Oh my gosh, and so many of us fear change, don't we? Or we feel resistant to that. Yeah.
Let it happen. Bring it on. Bring it on again. Bring it on.
Any suggestions about solstice rituals?
For winter or for summer? Because I'm in the southern hemisphere, so we're kind of like in this. I know you're easing into the winter solstice over there. So what I love, there's our Sabbath is Yule at winter. So our what we would call a holy day, one of the Sabbaths that we have it's Yule, the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. When I'm sharing that time with other witches, at different times when we've sat up all night with candles and a fire burning, the Yule log, so to speak, to welcome in the sun, to allow the sun to be born. And now here I am, the sun will rise. Well, no, actually, it only appears to be rising because the planet's actually spinning, but I won't go there again. It's when you're thinking of the story behind it all, of the sun rising and the birth of the sun, I love sitting up and then just, you can write your wishes and dreams for the coming year as the sun grows warmer. What do you want to heat up in your life? What do you want to bring life to? And even though that's traditionally a springtime kind of Beltane, Ostara kind of thing to do, you can also do it at Yule. You can kind of let yourself give birth to ideas, especially if you want to offer them as gifts in the world. I think that's a nice way of looking at it, like the traditional Christmas idea of giving gifts. What gifts of myself can I give this coming year, from this Yule to the next Yule, from this winter solstice to the next winter solstice? Write them on pieces of paper, burn them in the fire of the Yule log, save some of the ashes, and keep the ashes in a little pouch. And anytime you want to be inspired to create and give in that coming year, go back to your Magick pouch of ashes, take a little dab and pop it on your forehead or on your wrist. If you don't want to be too obvious, I can put it under my fringe. It's not too obvious. Having a smudge on my forehead for the day, and carry and just reinstate that, remember that moment where you made those, that wish for those gifts to offer for others. And yeah, that's not like a nice little ritual you can do, and put it in a green pouch, green for life and birth. And green's a nice colour that's associated with Yule and winter as well, green and red. So,
oh, I love that. And then I have one final question for you around the ancestral piece, which is a little bit of a funny question, but do you have some kind of dish of food that you like to enjoy, cook, or create that honors your ancestors? Like it's your cultural heritage or something that would be an offering. What do you like to cook?
Wow, what do I like to cook? Straight away I'm thinking there's one thing I don't have a lot of time to do is cook. It's like one of the things. I'm really good at mixing up an awesome salad. I'm really lots of stuff in salad and tossing it in balsamic and olive oil. I eat very simply because you know, I'm vegetarian, I'm sober, I haven't had a drink or anything for 10 years. I'm sober in a program. So my whole life's like pretty, you know, clean. But eating, straight away the thing that jumps into my head, what do I consider an ancestral food and what do I love making? And it's kind of simple, and it's also very much about, well, what do you have? And it reminds me of when my biological mother, my German mother, because I've met my biological family, and I'm, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I'm adopted, but I, you know, we're talking about genetic ancestral heritage and finding out I'm Hungarian Jew, Lutheran German, and what the families went through. My mother, Erica, my German mother, she told me about when the family escaped after the end of the Second World War, and they had to go and live in a woodcutter's hut in a forest, and for 2 winters, and it was extremely cold. And there's a family of 6, you know, there's the grandmother, the grandfather, the 3 young kids. My mother was very, very young, like she was like 3 or something, very, very young. And she, or even younger even, I think, but she said that Mutti, her mother, would tell her how they all lived in the woods, and there was no food, and so Mutti would go and forage, and she would find wild mushrooms. She would sometimes, and sometimes not, and when she couldn't, she would get birch twigs and boil the twigs to try and make some kind of broth to feed the family, you know, to try and have a hot meal. And sometimes she would they would steal, you know, sometimes something from other places if they could, old bread, or I'm trying to remember what else she told me, some of the things, like not steal from others who had nothing, but try to find trash, you know, just anything. It was very hard for them. And so when I think, strangely enough, when I think of how, what do I love making and what would I honor my ancestors, one of the things I love making is soup, funnily enough, and I do it with whatever I can get my hands on. So I often, that will be, I do, you know, I have the luxury of the supermarket. Our garden has a few bits and pieces in it. You know, we grow a few things here, not a lot, because I'm too busy to pay attention to a garden except to love it and talk to them. I'm talking to my tomato plants at the moment. Mini, Miny, Mo, their names are, because they're little Mini, Miny, Mo. Anyway, talk to my tomato plants. But I will throw a whole lot of stuff in and heat it up, and then I leave it cooking, and then I just kind of keep topping it up, whatever I can put in it, and it becomes this kind of living pot of broth and soup and vegetables and herbs and just whatever I've got, and chucking it in. And my partner always says it tastes delicious, and I enjoy eating it, and it's hearty and it's soothing, and maybe there's a sense of that ancestral thing. It always feels to me like the best, most nourishing food, like when I eat my soups, my winter soups. So that's kind of, I guess, a long-winded way of telling you what I like cooking, what I would offer as my answer for my answer. What is available? What have I got? What can I be resourceful, inventive with? What can I use a little bit differently? What might not be expected in this, but still thinking about how can it nourished? How can it be enjoyed? How can I give it? I'm never thinking of myself when I make the soup. I'm thinking about, well, is my partner going to enjoy it? Is it going to be nourishing for his mum who lives upstairs with us? You know, because she'll always get a bowl, you know. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It's been such a pleasure to connect with you today. I so appreciate you sharing so much of yourself today, your stories and your wisdom. And I think that message of like life is now just really came through so powerfully today for everybody who's watching. And it's a beautiful reminder at this time of the year. Up here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's getting very dark and the days are very short, and we're kind of waiting for the light to return. And I think we want to take time to hibernate sometimes, but also be curious, try new things.
So important, you know, that if we just even take our lessons from the moon, like the dark moon is always a reminder. And really that just means the earth is between the sun and the moon and we're blocking the light. So, I mean, again, as an amateur astronomer, I'm like, oh, maybe it's what happens, you know, but it's the meaning we give these things. You know, it's the human, you know, perception that is how we experience the magic too, obviously. So the dark moon reminds us every month it's important to step back, retreat, go inward, you know, don't be so out there. Just go in, because there's a whole universe going on inside too, you know. So the time to retreat is important. I love, when I was living in the Caribbean, I know we have to wrap it up, Desiree, but when I was in the Caribbean, I was like always in the sun. You know, we had 2 seasons there, summer and summer. It's like hot and hot. And it's like, which is fabulous. But it's always sun, sun, sun. And now I'm living in the southwest of Australia. We have seasons. Like we have a very cold, dark winter, and we have quite a rainy spring, but everything gets very green, which is fabulous. Very dry, hot summer, and very kind of quick transition from summer into winter. Summer seems to stretch on through fall or through autumn, as we call it. And even the Indigenous First Nations people, the original custodians of the land, have 6 seasons where I'm living. I won't even get into that now. If I start exploring that,
we got to have you come back because I want to know all this stuff.
I'm learning about it. It makes so much sense. Anytime you're wondering what to do seasonally as a witch, just look outside. The world will tell you, you know, wherever you are on the planet. But yeah, so it's an interesting thing when we, you know, I love getting cold. I love having fluffy things to put on in cold weather.
Yes, all the sweaters.
My faux leopard thing over here, or whatever it is. Is it leopard? I don't know. It's faux. But anyway, yeah, so, you know, don't be afraid to hibernate, go inward, and then, yeah, maybe sit up all night, light candles, light the fire, you know, write your wishes to be of useful service, the gifts you can offer others, burn them, get some ash, keep reminding yourself throughout the year. I mean, you know, it's a fabulous time of the year. Witches love Christmas as much as you know, it's all good.
Amazing. And we're going to pop your links down below because I want everyone to check out your Oracle deck and all your fabulous books and your different shows you have coming up with Sea Witch. Yes. You're just full of life. You have so many things happening, and I love it. I love it all.
Thank you, Desiree. And we've also got the lovely offer for your viewers as well. If people want to do
you want to tell us more about that?
My manifesto. We're offering. Well, I'm offering. I/we. I don't know. Whatever I am, multiple personalities. I'm very thrilled to be able to offer some chapters from Art of Witch as a gift for your viewers. So download, and hopefully that will be enjoyable and useful to those who read it.
Oh, thank you so much, Fiona. That is so generous. I love it. That's amazing. Well, thank you, my dear. All the best with all your projects. And it was so wonderful to connect with you today, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Thank you for having me be a part of your amazing community. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
I can see